welcome to today's Timeline Question Time. Today we're filming in Canterbury and we have a panel of professionals who are going to be discussing a child protection case involving a case of domestic abuse. I'll hand you over to our panel to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Claire Block and I'm representing MARAC and Freedom Programme. MARAC is a multi-agency risk assessment conference. Practitioners meet once a month. Practitioners carry out risk assessment, and if the risk assessment score is over 14 then it meets the threshold for MARAC. And with my other hat on, the Freedom Programme is a 12-week course for women to understand more about domestic abuse. It's a free and confidential service and empowers women to be able to make their own choices.
Thank you, Claire.
I'm Lisa Villiers, I'm the allocated social worker, so my role was to support the family but also to take the case to initial child protection conference.
Thank you, Lisa.
My name's Jodie Smith and I was the duty social worker, so I took the initial referral for this case. I'm also representing KCA today, who have been working with Mum around her substance misuse. Unfortunately they couldn't be here to attend.
Thanks, Jodie.
And I'm Nikki and I'm the health visitor. I became involved with the family when the youngest child was born. If I'll explain a bit about the health visitor's role, really we provide a universal public health service to all families with preschool children, and by providing a universal early intervention service, the health visitor is in a key position to identify families under stress and to take steps to provide support for them before the situation deteriorates. And although children's social care takes the statutory lead in managing child protection aspects, the health visitor is really the linchpin in terms of referring and liaising with other professionals and agencies.
Thank you, Nikki. Right, so if we're going to understand today's topic, we need to know what domestic abuse is. So domestic abuse, the new definition from the government, states that any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behaviour, violence or abuse between those aged 16 or over, who are or have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender or sexuality. We need to know, how does this affect the children that are witnessing it? It's really important to note that witnessing domestic abuse is classed as emotional abuse, and the children can suffer from anxiety, depression, difficulty sleeping, nightmares and flashbacks, bedwetting, temper tantrums, self-harm, alcohol or drug usage. Often they have feelings of anger, guilt, loneliness, powerless and confusion, to name but a few. So this topic is therefore a very important issue. Panel, if you're ready, I think we'll take some calls. And we have our first caller on the line.
How did this child come to be on a child protection plan?
Good question. So how did this child come to be on a child protection plan?
Well, I had concerns about a number of issues within the family, particularly regarding the physical and emotional welfare of the youngest child. There was some delay in the development of her speech and language, and for this I referred her to the speech and language therapist. Her mother had had a history of postnatal depression, and I was really concerned about the impact this was having on her daughter's cognitive and emotional welfare and behavioural development. The little girl had asthma and anaemia, but most worryingly she had been eating hair and dust out of the hoover. There was possible suspected hairball causing stomach complaints. I immediately referred her to the paediatrician for further investigations of distress by eating the contents of the hoover. So after seeking supervision with my safeguarding lead nurse and with consent from Susan's mother, I made an immediate referral to social care.
Thank you. And so Jodie, you were the duty social worker that was on call.
Yes, I was a duty social worker who took this referral on that day. We processed the information, looked through what information was available at the time. I discussed this with my manager to see if we felt that significant harm was being caused to this child. In doing so, we consider the Children Act 1989, which is really the legal framework for us in defining the situations in which the local authority has a duty to investigate. It's section 47 of this Act, which says if we have a reasonable cause to suspect if the child is suffering from what we would call significant harm. And we'd be looking at if that's been consistent over a period of time. It could be a one-off kind of traumatic experience. In this case, we decided that it was meeting that criteria, so we arranged for a strategy meeting to be held where we'd gain further information and hold a meeting which would be a multi-agency meeting with like the police, education, social services, health. And from that we decided that a child protection conference should be held, and it was referred over to an allocated social worker, which was Lisa.
Yeah, and that's when I got involved at that stage, and it was my job to convene the initial child protection conference, which is a multi-agency meeting in itself, looking at the assessment framework as well to gather all of that information, to look at the needs of the family, the risks and the concerns, and that would then be shared at the child protection conference. Where we would share, all the professionals would be invited to share information about the family. We would be making judgments about the children suffering harm, and whether these children should be placed on a child protection plan. At that meeting, at that child protection conference, we'd look at any future action as well to safeguard the children and the timescales involved in that. So in this particular case, the outcome was that the children were placed on a child protection plan, and there were a number of actions that were agreed in order to help the family and to safeguard the children.
Thank you. So we'll take our second question. So how is this helping the family?
Well, from the initial child protection conference, obviously regular core group meetings were held subsequently, involving professionals from different agencies who are involved with the family themselves, and we looked at taking forward the child protection plan. So, referrals were made to KCA and MARAC, and these core group meetings would be about sharing information again, and so the plan's been about helping mum to make informed choices to keep her and her children safe so that they thrive, really, which she's been able to successfully do.
This domestic abuse has been going on and off for 7 years now. The partner has actually threatened to burn the house down to kill mum, and has also threatened mum with a knife. MARAC meetings are convened for the highest risk cases of domestic abuse, and they meet once a month involving multi-agency working. So typically they would involve health, criminal justice, child protection, housing, and other agencies such as statutory and voluntary sectors. And then they would create a safety plan to support the victim and the children. They also share information with other relevant agencies, leading to support and protect the family.
Well, a recommendation from the CP conference was for mum to engage with a KCA worker around her substance misuse. So she will be receiving, which has been receiving one-to-one sessions on a weekly basis to kind of address her substance misuse, but also for her to kind of consider some of the underlying issues surrounding that as well, really. So it's giving mum a chance to kind of reflect on kind of what's going on for her, and how to make changes in her life.
And with my other hat on, mum also attended the Freedom Programme, which is a free and confidential 12-week programme, empowering women to make their own choices and enabling them to understand beliefs held by abusive men. And it shows them also the effects that domestic abuse can have on their children, and give them confidence to develop healthy relationships in the future.
Thank you. We'll take our next question. Interesting. So how did you manage it?
I think for me it's been about communication, really, and good communication. For example, if somebody wasn't able to attend the core group meetings, would have been fed back to himself. and you know, a report sent perhaps, or somebody else from their office would have been sent on their behalf. I think for me it was about keeping the core group members updated and informed about the processes. But that's not to say there haven't been difficulties. For example, I've had issues using my computer system and actually producing the reports to share with the professionals. That's been a challenge for me. So often it's been about picking up the phone, you know, using the old-fashioned system and using emails. So yeah.
I think as well, where there's multiple core groups and case conferences, professionals get the opportunity to see what's worked well, to perhaps reconvene and make a new plan moving forward and adjust it accordingly.
That's right.
I think perhaps also, if I also add that if we didn't have the full cooperation and ability to work with the mum herself, who was very
Engaging.
keen and engaging really with all of us, and we built up a trusting relationship with her. I think if that hadn't have happened, of course, then we wouldn't have had such a good outcome.
No, I agree. Mum in this case is actually very open.
Okay, I think we've got one more caller. I think that's something we all want to know. How are this family doing now?
Well, I'll start by saying that I think we've had a very positive outcome on this family.
What are the outcomes
and
of
that's
this family
largely
and where are
because
they
of
now?
early identification and early intervention. They've had access to professional help, for example, the Freedom Programme for Mum, the MARAC meetings for domestic abuse, and showing mum the effects that domestic abuse has on the children.
At the review conferences, and that looked at the progress and to ascertain if the children were still at risk of harm, and in this case the conference decided that they were no longer at risk of harm. Mum was making good choices, engaging with programmes and professionals, and we felt that they were no longer at risk, and they were stepped down to child in need and are currently no longer involved with social services.
And is mum still with her partner?
No.
And so the child is the centre of this. How's the child's health now?
Much improved. Her speech and language has come on leaps and bounds since when I first met her, and I noticed much more positive interaction between the little girl and her mother. Her stomach complaints have resolved. She is no longer eating hair and dust out of the hoover. And generally, developmentally, she's doing absolutely as she should be at her age, doing very well.
Doing well at school as well. That's
Yes,
going well.
yes, and
Yes.
apparently
And
the
generally just doing.
attendance is good at school, which there was concerns that it wasn't.
That's really
So that's
excellent.
really good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, panel. So there we have it, a successful working collaboration, and thank you for watching.